is traveling to Turkey as a South African as cheap as everyone says it is? We tracked every single one of our expenses, and this is what we found. You don't need to go to an embassy or send your passport off. But the truth of the matter is, it's actually free. And for that, you're gonna need cash. It's hot, but it's not too hot yet. I recently got back from a trip to Turkey and Greece with my husband, and we are both travelers on South African passports, and I thought I'd just spill the tea on everything you need to know as a South African traveler visiting Turkey. So one of the main questions that I've received in my DMs since I've traveled to Turkey is about the visa, or the e-visa, to travel to Turkey. So essentially, there's only an e-visa requirement for South Africans to travel to Turkey, which means it's just something that you complete online. It's really, really quick and easy. And then you just print that out and take it with you on your travels to Turkey. You don't need to go to an embassy or send your passport off for approval anywhere. However, there are quite a lot of third-party sites that are going to try and charge you for this e-visa. But the truth of the matter is, it's actually free and you really, really should not be paying for it. So let me show you step by step how you're going to get that free e-visa to travel to Turkey as a South African. First, this is the URL you're going to head to. Once you've hit that URL, you're going to add in the country that you're traveling from, or your country that your passport is in, so that's South Africa, and then you're going to fill in the verification process. Once you've done that verification, you're going to see that that visa is going to be valid for 30 days in an 180-day period. And the main thing that you are super excited to see is at the bottom there's going to be the little word gratis, free. This visa is free and should not be costing you any money as a South African. Next step you're going to pass through is to add in your personal details. This is actually really, really quick and easy for this visa. Unlike the UK visa, which has many, many different stages of the form to fill in, and it feels like they're asking you hectic background questions. This just has a few, like your name, your surname, ID number, birth date, mother's name, father's name, that sort of thing. And once you've filled in those few questions, you're then going to press submit. Very shortly after this, you'll get an email to your email address, which will be a final verification step. Once you've then done that, you'll then have your e-visa, your free e-visa in your inbox. When I did this, it honestly took me 3 minutes, and I was so shocked and surprised at how quick this e-visa came into my inbox. Once you've got that, you're just going to print that out, take it with you on your trip. You won't need any other supporting documentation. We won't ask for anything else like proof of funds or where you're staying, anything like that. So just your South African passport and the e-visa, all you need to enter Turkey as a South African. So is traveling to Turkey as a South African as cheap as everyone says it is? Yes and no. I would say that it's definitely not as cheap as it once was, and it's not as cheap as other destinations like Southeast Asia and South America might be. However, it's definitely a cheaper alternative to other European countries like France or Spain, for example. When I was in Istanbul, I picked up a Lonely Planet from the accommodation we were staying at, and it actually made a disclaimer in the beginning section saying that any prices that you will be seeing in that Lonely Planet guide for accommodation, meals, anything, you can probably safely double them to get a more accurate representation of what things cost, because there's just been a massive inflation crisis that's happened in Turkey recently. So that's not a South African thing, that's just a general traveling to Turkey thing, that over the past year, prices have just gone up exponentially, so you can anticipate that. Having said that, we tracked every single one of our expenses, and this is what we found. We found restaurant prices to be quite similar to that of Cape Town. So we ate out for every dinner, and for lunches we did a combination of eating out or grabbing picnic goodies from the grocery store to have on the beach, or we also stopped along the way at petrol stations and grabbed stuff there along the way. Breakfasts were also all included in our accommodation price, which was amazing. And if you know, the Turkish breakfasts are absolutely insane. And you basically have a huge spread of like eggs, bread, cheeses, tomato, cucumber, fresh fruit, spreads, olives, all the things. Anyway, so basically something you can factor into your costing for food is that generally your breakfast will be included in your accommodation, and you're just going to be paying for your lunches and dinner. In total, our average cost came out to around 900 Rand per day for both of us on food. For accommodation, you're paying on average we paid on average around 75 euros per night for both of us. which rounded up to an equivalent of around 1,500 Rand, which if you compare to some of the accommodation prices you find in Cape Town or those cute hot tub stays around the Western Cape, which are probably closer to like the 2,500 Rand side of things, I think that we got away with pretty decent accommodation prices in Turkey. We were staying in quite basic places, so places that were essentially just a room with an ensuite bathroom. They had aircon. They sometimes had a view, sometimes they didn't, and all of them had breakfast included in them. But they weren't very fancy, luxurious. They didn't have any of their own kitchens, anything like that. But for us, they were centrally located, and they had everything that we needed, and most importantly, they were affordable. So on the whole, we found accommodation in Turkey to be, we could find cheap alternatives, which was great. But you also obviously have the higher end of things, which is available to you as well. Then finally, we rented a car through discovercars.com. I got this through a sponsored collaboration, so we didn't pay for it. But it was valued at around 290 euros or 5,800 Rand for 9 days of car usage. We then spent about 2,600 Rand on fuel costs. We found the petrol prices to be quite similar to that of South Africa, so around 22 to 24 Rand per litre. We were in quite a fuel efficient car, so we didn't end up spending that much on petrol, which was great. Then another sort of hidden cost that we didn't know about, but we encountered was the e-tolls that you get mostly in the province close that Istanbul is in. So as you're driving through, you kind of get zapped under the bridges by these e-tolls. We were a little bit nervous about what they would come to, but in the end, Luke only got billed around 300 Rand for all the e-tolls on his credit card that we'd used for the car rental. And then finally, another factor that you're just going to need to think about is paying for parking. So of all the places that we stayed, there was probably one place where we didn't have to pay for the parking. The rest of them didn't have their own parking areas, so we had to go and park in like the local parking lot, which, you're basically paying per day or per hour, but then it shifts into like a per day fee, which was not exorbitantly expensive, but it was pricier than we were expecting. And in total on our trip, we spent about 870 Rand on parking. For that, you're gonna need cash, so make sure you bring that. Just sort of something to add on the cash front was that we found mostly in restaurants we could pay by card. Petrol, we obviously always paid by card, but then it was things like parking and some restaurants you had to pay by cash. And so what we did was we would just draw kind of like a bigger sum, and also sort of food stalls. That was something that you needed cash for. So what I would recommend doing, I wouldn't go and buy Turkish lira before you go, because you will get charged more in banks to do that in South Africa. So I would recommend just going overseas, make sure you let your bank know that you will be traveling, just so that they don't block your card for fraud. And once you arrive, once you've sort of figured out what things cost, I would then do one bigger cash draw that will cover things like parking and little street vendor sort of stuff. And then split that between a few of you. But otherwise, you're definitely good with card. So we obviously hired a car when we were in Turkey, which was amazing. And we would absolutely recommend that to anybody traveling there. Alternatively, what you're doing is you're using the public bus system, which is the Dolmuş system. And as far as I'm aware, it's pretty well connected. So you're definitely able to get to most places on it. But obviously, whenever you're on public transport, things are slower. You don't have the luxury of time. Well, if you have the luxury of time and you're on more of a budget, then go for the public buses. But if you are kind of shorter on time and wanting to make sure you can see everything you want to in a shorter period, I would recommend hiring a car. We also found that for us, it meant that we could go and do certain things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do if you didn't have a car. So things like going and see the Butterfly Valley viewing point, which honestly was just the most mind-blowing view I've ever seen in my life. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have a car. We also loved just driving along the coast and stopping, enjoying the view, that sort of thing, just along the way, and being able to take things in our own time. So I would definitely recommend doing that. We booked our car through Discover Cars Rental, and you can hit this link and you'll be able to hire through them. At the end of our last vlog, you would have seen Luke talking through everything about the car hire experience. And if you haven't watched our most recent vlog, please go check out our road tripping Turkey's Turquoise Coast vlog, where at the end of it, Luke talks through everything on our experience of hiring a car in Turkey and driving a rental car in Turkey. But on the whole, we really, really loved it. You are driving on the right-hand side of the road, whereas in South Africa, you drive on the left. So it is a little bit different, but simple things like most of the highways being dual carriageway mean that you don't notice it as much. It's just when you get to smaller towns that you start to notice that sort of thing. Like I said earlier, petrol prices are quite similar to that of South Africa. One thing that is different that I didn't really realize, and we kind of got ourselves mixed up the first time it happened, but when you fill up with fuel, you fill up and then you go inside to like the little petrol station shop, and you then pay for your petrol in the shop. They don't bring a card machine out to you. So the one time I had gone in to go and buy snacks, and Luke was at the car doing the petrol thing, and next thing this like massive amount of money was being charged to me. And I was like, what's going on? And Luke had to come inside and be like, no, don't worry. It's also for the petrol. So just so you know, that's what they're going to do. When you're hiring a car in Turkey, you will need a credit card in the name of the driver. That's just so that they can deduct that deposit in case there are any damages or things like that. So whoever is going to be the registered driver, they need to have a credit card in their name that you can put down as the security deposit. And then the final thing that you need to know is about the international driver's license. So this is something that you can get quite easily from any AA. There's one in Cavendish in Cape Town. That's where we got ours. Basically, you either can fill in the form online beforehand, or we didn't know, so we filled it in there. I would recommend bringing some ID photos. Otherwise, you can do them there, but you'll pay extra for them. So if you've got some already, just bring them. And yeah, you fill out the form, you hand in your photos, you hand in your license, and they then specify which country it's for and for what period it's for. And then it takes them a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour max, to process it. So off you go, do your own shopping, and then you come back and you'll be able to collect that. It wasn't expensive. I think it was around 190 Rand. And what you then do is when you're in Turkey, you then show your South African driver's license and then the international driver's license together. You need to have both. And that then allows you to hire a car and drive a car in Turkey. So when is the best time to travel to Turkey? We went there in June, early June, and we found it to be the most perfect time. It was a little bit uncharacteristic in that there was a heat wave going on when we were there. But with global warming, I guess we need to be expecting it to be hotter earlier. But yeah, we were getting temperatures like 40 degrees, which was not normal for early June. But early June is supposed to be a good time for weather because it's hot, but it's not too hot yet. Not in our case. I would definitely say that for places like Istanbul, they're better. If you're just doing an Istanbul like city break, I wouldn't go in summer. I would rather go in cooler months, like maybe autumn or spring. Because it gets really, really hot there and you're sightseeing, so you don't need it to be hot. It's almost better if it's less hot, less sweaty. But yeah, otherwise we found June to be a really nice month to travel in Turkey. It was definitely like tourist season had started, so there was a vibe going. There was a summer vibe where people were out and about, people on the beaches, at restaurants, but it wasn't crowded yet. And I know that July and August, particularly August, is when things get really, really busy and crowded in Turkey and just the whole of Europe. That's because of the British and European summer holidays being in August. So for us, we didn't find that. We found it to be quite quiet still. Not quiet, but just not overly touristy and overcrowded. It was like things were enjoyable. There was a nice vibe, but it wasn't too busy. So we would say from our experience that traveling in early June was a really nice time to be traveling in Turkey. And obviously, as South African school holidays tend to be in June and into July. So if you're deciding with that, I would go the earlier part of the holidays as a good time to visit Turkey. That's it from me on my questions and answers on traveling to Turkey as a South African. If you've got any more, please hit the comment button and let me know what questions you have about traveling to Turkey as a South African. Otherwise, if you've missed them, make sure you go check out our Istanbul vlog, where we eat our way through the gorgeous, gorgeous street markets of Istanbul, as well as our epic road trip along Turkey's Turquoise Coast. That was honestly just like the best trip, and highly recommend. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that would be amazing. You can expect to be seeing a vlog from our week island hopping in Greece, where we travel to the island of Milos with my family as the next video. Anyway, stay tuned and have a beautiful day.